5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA. Online at the Big1050.com. Sam Webb, Mr. Ira Weintraub on the other side, and joining me as they do every single week to talk all things Michigan sports, Michigan football, Michigan basketball, Michigan. I mean, if we were going to talk some Pistons, I had my LCA background ready to go since my Pistons are in the playoffs. But we won't do that. I won't do that to Brian. It's my man.
I used to be a Pistons fan, and then they traded away Chauncey, and I was like, I'm out.
That was it. That was
That was it.
You would like these Pistons, man. I think they're a throwback to that
All
time.
right.
But at any rate, Dusty May has our Wolverines back, even though they had their exit from the tournament. He was able to multitask, unlike Tom Izzo, and work on the tournament and work on the portal. Clearly, Brian Cook, Seth Fisher, and Craig Ross. Welcome. Good morning, gents. Starting with you, BC. How are you this morning? Let's start there. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good.
Craig Ross. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. You know, I was always a Cleveland, whatever they are, fan, even when they traded Rocky Colavito. So, you know,
Nobody knows who that is.
Well, that's
I like
probably true.
hamburger. I know exactly who that is, and I like hamburger.
Never mind. Go ahead.
And it's Seth Fisher. Hey, you look like you're moving your arm, man, moving your shoulder. How you doing?
I am. It's funny. I go in and I feel like I can pretend like I'm an athlete when I'm at the gym next to all these, actual athletes, and I'm just, the fat guy trying to get my left shoulder working again.
Okay, so
yeah, man. I got full range of motion. Look at that.
You're making some things happen. Yeah, let's get her done. All right, Seth, and so I mentioned Dusty May, who we had in studio, and Dusty, he dropped by. Let me tell you how cool Dusty is. So we initially had planned to get started with one of the assistants like Mike or Akeem, and that's like, I'll go first up to the plate. I was like, okay, that's great, but he had to squeeze it in between that and going like a long way to get on and recruit. And like these dudes, they're in the heart of preparing for the Sweet 16, Brian, and very, very clearly, they're working on the portal. Like very clearly, very, very clearly, he was working on getting a lead guard with an understanding that the guard that who was leading him at that point could react adversely to the guy that he might be bringing in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately a cutthroat world out there, and I would like to see less player movement. I don't know how that transpires, but this is the state of college basketball as it is, and you have Cadeau come in, and a couple weeks ago after the season ended, we were doing our podcast on the weekend, and like we were looking at the roster, and we were like, Michigan is losing a lot of shot creation. And, Morez Johnson has a lot of skills, but he doesn't create shots the way that Vlad Golden creates shots, right? He's more of a shot absorber. And, we were just looking at this roster and like, we could really use a Xavier Simpson type point guard next year, a guy who's got the ball in his hands and has just a sky high assist rate. And that's Elliot Cadeau. He's not maybe that he doesn't have the turnover rate that you might want. It was 26, which is flatly unacceptable for a point guard. His shooting has been kind of, comes and goes. He got up to 34% this year from three. But he has a 40 assist rate, which is upper class Xavier Simpson. And he's the guy that you want running the point on a pick and roll when you have roll men who are excellent at that facet of the game, but don't have a ton of back to the basket game. And that's what looks like Michigan's going to have at center next year. So it feels like it makes sense given the roster. The only concern is like ball dominant point guard. You need to surround him with enough shooting, and that's not going to come from the center spot. So you pretty much need all of your wing players to be able to knock down threes. And it's like, well, what's Roddy Gale's three going to look like next year? Because we saw him have a game in the NCAA tournament where it's like, oh yeah, that looks like it's going to work out just fine. But this is a guy who shot 10% through the Big Ten season. So it seems like it's a good fit for what they have on the roster. It's just there's a couple of question marks about some moving parts.
Well, I thought a couple of things were really, I mean, first of all, Sam, congrats. That was a phenomenal interview with Dusty May. It lasted for 50 minutes and he wasn't ready to go. It looked to me like, okay, got any more questions? Got any more stuff? And he wasn't like hustling off, regardless of what he had to do. He was there to answer stuff. And the incredible thing to me was how honest his answers were. I mean, he didn't hedge about the Trey Donaldson.
He didn't
at all. He said, look, here was the deal. My job is to create the best basketball team I can. We needed a guy who could pass the ball. We just really didn't have that. And so, he went out and got Elliot Cadeau, and they got Cadeau. And
we sound like Monty Python. Oh, Cadeau.
Yeah, and still wanted Trey. I mean, he was clear that Michigan still wanted Trey, but they wanted him to play a somewhat different role as a backup point guard and competing at the 2. And Trey didn't want to do that. And so, because legitimately Trey wanted to be more a greater on-ball presence and wanted to improve his ability to play on the ball. And there was no hiding that from Dusty May. That was absolutely, upfront. The other thing about this interview that I found incredible that no other coach, I think, has really said is, I think Dusty used the word cap space. Right. He talked about how much cap space, he had, and how they were going to negotiate the cap space within the program, and so, I don't know how much money they have. I'm guessing there's 3 parts of it. I'm guessing they've got about 4 million would be my guess, maybe 5 million from the 22.5, something in that range. And I'm guessing they've got classic NIL opportunities, which would be, say, Mike Morris Law Firm, for example. and then they've got fake NIL, which is, I assume Champion Circle or whatever that is. So I assume there's 3 parts to it, and this is what they're negotiating with their players. Next time you talk to them, I'd like to ask them, are they employees or are they 1099s? Are they independent contractors? And if they're 1099s, who is helping them file tax returns, do quarterlies, all that,
So they're the employee status. That's actually something that they're actually debating right now. I mean, there's a whole group of ADs, players even, which I was happy to see. Conference commissioners. There are a group of them sort of lobbying Congress right now about, hey, we need you to get on a good foot and help, bring this thing forward about how this is going to look in the future. But I want to get back to your initial point. But to answer that question, no, they are not employees as of now.
Okay.
But to your initial point about cap space and how they look at it, it's a throwback to a conversation that I had with Sean McGee on signing day. Did a signing day show where I had to talk to all of or many of the signees, and I had a 30-minute session with Sean McGee, and he had set up sort of Michigan's their approach to NIL very much like an NFL NFL organization. How they slotted positions, like they were going to spend on quarterbacks, left tackles, edge guys, wide receivers, how they tiered their spending, and they were going to stick to a certain amount, and they weren't going to spend over that. It was like a cap to it.
Okay.
And I know that Sean and Kyle Church are very close communication. I think the models mirror one another.
Mhm.
The communication is symbiotic in a way. So I think they run in parallel how they approach how they look at spending on players, how they approach the cap sort of look at the cap like approach to how they look at spending on positions and spending on players. I think that's why Dusty talked about it like that. So yeah, I think he has a hard cap. It's not a hard cap in the sense that it's being imposed on them. It's something I think they're taking the professional model and imposing it on themselves. And I think it's something that Sean McGee brought in.
One question for all you guys is I don't see Elliott as necessarily a better player than Trey Donaldson.
He's a different player.
He's a different player, not necessarily a better player.
This is what
Well,
Brian
he's a creator. He's a
Yeah.
creator, and this is what Brian was saying. Last year, we could get points by getting the ball to Golden in the paint, and he's going to make something happen. That's creation, right? Creation is very important in basketball, and we had Danny Wolf, who was going to get the ball on the perimeter and do something, create the shot, create the points. They were losing both of those main engines of creation, and they needed somebody or somebodies, right? Now, if you're sure to get Jaxel Lendenborg, I think that he's probably going to the NBA. But if you were sure to get a guy like that, you could have a guy like Trey and improve him to the point where he's not going to miss his reads, and you're going to be able to get offense out of him creating looks and running the offense. When they didn't have anyone like that, they look down the roster and they're like, okay, Morez Johnson, that's a guy who's a dunker, right? If they get a Daymara, that guy's a dunker, right? You have to get him to the rim, and then he'll score. And when you have that kind of those kinds of guys, you need someone who's going to make that read every single time. Then you got to run offense and run those reads. And they looked at Trey, and I'm sure they said, how many they looked at the tape, they know how many times he didn't make his read, right? And they looked at Kason and they're like, okay, he's a freshman, he'll get better, but he's not someone who's going to be able to run offense like that. And they looked at Cadeau and they're like, this guy can run an offense. This guy is going to make sure that every time we go down the court, we create a shot. And that's what you need in this offense, and that's what you need in basketball. So I think they had a major need for that. And then they looked at Trey and they said, we're going to need some shooting. So, can you be an off guard and can you be the other point guard so we don't have Kason being the other point guard? And, that was a conversation he didn't want to have, right? And they lost Fat too. And I think that this is just the reality of the system that they have now. And I think that the NCAA and the players are going to have to sit down and figure out a better way to run the system, even if it's just a cap. Right? Even dealing with a cap and finding ways to incentivize teams to hold on to players and graduate players, because this doesn't work for everybody.
I think Brian nailed on a point that I was thinking about, that the coaches were thinking about, that these could be complementary pieces. And I tried to, when Dusty mentioned Elliott Cadeau's name, and if the NCAA makes a thing about that, I better not make a thing about that. Would be such a minor thing, right? I tried to ask him a question to get him to the point that he was trying to make, is that Trey wanted to be ball dominant. He wanted the ball in his hands. Basically, he wanted to be the guy who ran the show 90% of the time, that's not what is in the best interest of them as a program moving forward. But could the mix be him having the ball in his hands, 30-40% of the time, and being off ball the rest of the time, and being great running off pin downs, and being that guy that who else can they have that was running off screens, getting threes, and getting shots and getting them downhill and doing a bunch of different. Like, Trey could have been so great as the off-ball guy. I just thought this was a match made in heaven, these two being together, but that's not what Trey wanted. And then you had, Brian, this other aspect of it in the portal. Like, this is they said that the amount of money in the portal as well. So the fact that he wanted to be this ball dominant guy and the allure of even more money in the portal this year than last year, those two things made it be like, as soon as you're telling me I can't have what I want, it's like, oh, the grass is automatically greener like right now, and he was gone.
Yeah, we're kind of in this weird transitional period where the House settlement is expected to be approved for the fall. It hasn't been approved yet. But one part of that settlement is that now NIL deals are going to go through a clearinghouse run by a Deloitte, and they have to confirm that it's fair market value, which like that seems fraught.
Yeah.
But there's an article on Yahoo from a couple days ago where there's just people are trying to get every deal done before this clearinghouse comes into existence. So there's like a mad dash to hand people cash
Right.
before there's some sort of oversight about all of it. Now, to me, that's just another lawsuit that's going to happen. And like, unless you get Congress actually acting and passing an antitrust exemption that allows this to continue. But in any case, there's a lot of cash sloshing around right now that might not be there in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, if you just start restricting that stuff, it just goes back under the table. So what are we even doing here? But that's neither here nor there. What is important is that, you know, Michigan has a backcourt that seems fairly set. They pick up Johnson from Illinois. You know, Dusty at some point during the season said we need to get tougher, and Dusty May listened to Dusty May
Yeah.
when he got a guy who, like, if he hadn't had his wrist hurt for 6 games, would have been the number 1 offensive rebounder in the Big Ten as a true freshman.
He's a brute. The guy is a brute.
You know what? I was watching his film and I'm like, there is a 100% chance that Craig Ross is going to call this guy a brute. Like, I wish I could have bet on that.
Yeah.
He's got like Pippi Longstockings on the.
Oh, yeah.
It's so funny to watch him play. I love it.
Oh, that's the only thing about him. I like, oh man, whenever they came on, I was like, oh, come on, man, with the hair, dude. But I'm good with it. I'm good with it. If you play like that, wear your hair like you want to.
I feel that is like a closer's facial hair, right? Like you wear that, so like someone's staring at you, and then it just hurts even more when he just thunder dunks on your face.
It's a boy named Sue, except it's a haircut.
Yeah,
right.
Whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, man. Because like, he hurt his wrist against Michigan State, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, man,
by jumping like 4 feet in the air and then coming down on the back of Trey Holloman, and that was what hurt him. It was an insane block.
Yeah. So, you guys were talking about bigs. I mean, maybe we should outline. Fat is gone. He's in the portal. Trey is gone to Miami. Sam Walters is in the portal. I assume gone, but I don't think he has a destination yet. Is that right?
He doesn't have a destination. He seems to be looking at mid-majors at this point.
Okay. Justin Pippen went to Michigan's historical sister school, Cal Berkeley.
Yeah.
Jace is in the portal. Reuben Jones has no more eligibility. Vlad has no more eligibility. Danny Wolf, from your conversation, seems to be 95%. Would you call it that to the NBA?
Yeah, 90, more than that. I mean, he's going to be a first-round pick because basically what Dusty laid out is we'll beat second-round pick money. We won't beat first-round pick money.
Right, and he's probably in the late first round from what I'm reading, so probably he's gone. So basically, you're a lot like last year. You got 4 guys left from this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got
Namari. Did you mention Namari? Because, I mean, basically what it sounds like is the ball is in Namari's court. Does he want to play another year of college basketball? If he does, Michigan wants him back.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, clearly. Like, and I understand that Namari is a little bit older, but like, do you want $1 million to play college basketball? Seems like a pretty easy question to answer to me, but
well, I don't know if he's going to get $1 million, but whatever he gets is fine with me. And, it's hard to say. He is a very thoughtful guy. I don't know what your conversations with him have been like, Sam, but I find him, in the 1 or 2 times I talk to him, very thoughtful. So it's hard to know exactly for me at least, looking back on what his priorities are. But in any event, they've got Will Cheddar, Roddy Gale, Namari, maybe, and Kason. The same as last year to some extent. So he's building a whole new team around, three or four guys. And the one that's been talked about the most is Yaxel Lendenberg or Lendenborg.
Borg.
Okay. And
I love this part of the interview with Dusty. I love this part. I just love the mindset.
yeah,
He was like, "Look, man, I'm gonna go after the best players in the country."
yeah, he makes it clear what his job description is. My job description is to get the best players and to put together the best team possible. We'll negotiate around everything else.
Yeah.
But isn't that the way it has to be? I mean, he can't, I don't see how he can be any other way, or else, he ends up like the hockey team last year.
Yeah, he said, he said, look, I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket. I got contingencies.
Right.
If he goes to the NBA, there are other things that we can do. But I'm not gonna eliminate them from the equation on the mere possibility that he might go. Man, I'm gonna recruit that guy.
Right.
Because there's a decent chance that I might get him.
It seems like about 20% that he'll be at Michigan this year. That's about what I can tell. And so at the same time, you're seeing the kid from UCLA being mentioned. Yeah, I have a hunch that he's our center next year, along with Montez Johnson. Now Brian put some clips up of him because I hadn't paid any attention to him, but his stats are pretty impressive. It was just limited minutes. I think he played about, 12, 13 minutes a game on average.
Well, there were a couple reasons for that. One is that he got norovirus in the middle of the season.
All right.
I had norovirus at about the same time, and I was out for a bit.
I know.
And also, there's an article just sort of vaguely referring to an illness, and some people have asserted that it was mono. So, he's a guy who just didn't have the conditioning to play a ton of minutes. UCLA looked a ton better when he was out there. So if you look at the on-off splits between him and Tyler Bilodeau, when Mara was on the floor, there's a 14-point drop at opponent efficiency at the rim when Mara's on the floor. And if he had got, again, the 40 minutes that Johnson didn't get, he would have led the country in block shots. He had a 17% block shot rate.
Astoundingly high rate.
And he improved a great deal. He was close to unplayable as a freshman, got much better, does have a little back to the basket game, but he's not exactly a guy who you're going to dump down there and he's going to have 30% usage. But if he's healthy, if he's got the conditioning, I think he could be a 20-minute per game guy next year. And I love the idea of being able to throw both these guys out there, have them go, full blast for half the game and just absolutely overwhelm opponents with either length or athleticism and motor in Johnson's case. Because, this year, Michigan had a really good roster when a really good lineup when Wolf and Golden were out there at the same time. But when games got kind of up and down, you could see Golden sort of physically get tired. Mm-hmm. And then when only one of them was on the court, which was frequently, they just weren't, it didn't quite function the way you wanted it to. And so with these guys platooning mostly at center, I don't think they can play together for more than maybe a couple minutes a game. That gives you a really good idea of what you're going to get from that spot. You're going to get defense, you're going to get rebounding, you're not going to get any stretching of the floor at all. And so you just build your team around that idea. So it feels like there will be less of a drop off when you go to a second unit, because that second unit is not replacing an NBA first round pick with, Will Cheddar. Will Cheddar's probably going to be in the starting lineup, to be honest, which is fine. He's going to be a senior. He's a team leader. He did some things for Michigan last year. I think that's going to be a fine setup. But I like the idea of these guys as a platoon. And I know that Johnson came in and he had to be told that, Michigan, we're going to bring in another center. We can't go into a season with one center.
Yeah.
And Mara obviously knows what's up. So I'm excited about that potential because I think Mara has a lot of upside to explore because like he improved a ton last year. I can't emphasize that enough. And he was struggling through some things that sapped his ability. So if he's healthy and he's hale this year and he gets another off season of working on his game, I think he can be a real force in the league.
Yeah,
I,
the
I,
guy
I
he's gonna feel like a caged animal set free. But leave a big rope. I
Well,
mean,
yeah.
I think he needs to. All right, so the breakdown of minutes with him, you can see a guy who's got 30% of the minutes, or who's only playing 10 minutes a night, and you think, oh, okay, they weren't really using him. Brian's point about the norovirus, when we faced Michigan, he played 9 minutes. He played like 7 minutes the next game, and then when UCLA went on their winning streak, when they kind of came back and they made their playoff run or tournament run, it was he was playing 20 to 30 minutes every night. Like he had and he was like their main guy against Wisconsin. He was, whenever they played somebody who just had a small center, he was just dominating that guy.
Yeah.
And that's, he's 7'3". So I know it hasn't happened yet, but I think that it seems like it's going to happen because Creighton got the was it the Serbian center that we were looking at, the freshman. So I think that now these are, if that's where they land up, I think that is a great response. He's a fantastic rim protector, not like a guy who's going to jump up in the air. Definitely a drop guy, but like Brian said, you're going to have your center set, and it's a certain type of it's going to have a certain role in the offense either way. Even though they're very different guys, if you're game planning for them, they're very different dudes, right? Morez Johnson and Tamar are not the same person at all. But if you are game planning your offense, they're both going to be the role guy. And you have Cadeau creating the offense. He can probably play, 80% of your minutes. Have McKinney and Kason take a little bit of the point guard duties when he's not. And yeah, that's a team.
The on Mara, incidentally, he actually I think was the second highest usage guy as a percentage on UCLA last year. So
Because he actually has some assists. He has some.
Yes, he has a relatively high assist rate, a reasonable turnover rate, and off the film, he's got a left hand, and he shoots his hook shot 8 to 10 feet at most. But he has a hook shot he can go either right or left with. He won't shoot free throws, or at least he didn't last year. I think it was 58% or a bit less. So he's really intriguing, and I agree with Brian that the improvement from year 1 to year 2 was remarkable. And I'm not saying he's Zach Edey, but
that's who Tim kind of compared him to. Is he said he was Zach Edey like?
Yeah.
I mean, Haas, Harms, like Purdue always has a dude like that.
I mean,
well, this guy is better than Haas and Harms. Well, better than Harms at least.
Mara has the kind of size and arm length that just make it brutal to try to get a shot up around him on the rim when he's like able to go. Like he just, there were points last year where he just was just in cement because he just didn't have the conditioning. But he's 7'3", and he was a true sophomore last year, and a guy who came over from Europe, and like never give up on a big, right? And this is a guy who already made a big step forward, already was a very effective player in the Big Ten when he was able to be out there. And with guards, it's like year 1 to year 2 is when you make your big leap, right? Like Kason, his leap is going to be next year, and then he's going to be kind of what he is. Now he'll get incrementally better, but for bigs, it's just a much steadier progression. So getting a guy who was able to do what he did in the Big Ten last year, admittedly in limited minutes, and getting him as a further improved version of Mara, it's very exciting. I think that's going to be a really, like, he could be anything from a decent backup big to all Big Ten.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's how I see it, and it's again fascinating. Now, this assumes, of course, that Yaxel is off to the NBA. Now, as I gather, Yaxel is either Michigan or NBA, and that's it. That's what it seems like. And if Yaxel comes here,
why do you say seems like? I don't. Is there a mention of another possibility?
No, I mean I haven't. That's why I'm saying, but it's college basketball, Sam. I mean, so nothing is 100% until it happens. And so, You know, so, but my understanding at least is that Yaxel is here. I think he announced that, unless he goes to the NBA, which I think he said was 80%. So Dusty's got these moving parts, as you point out. You know,
He's got to be a first round pick. You know, I mean, Michigan, like look, Dusty made it clear. Second round money, like we'll pay you that. You know, why would you go to the NBA, you know, on a second round contract deal when you could come here? We'll pay you that for you, and you position yourself to be in the draft and get first round money on a guaranteed deal next year.
I kind of imagine that the first round extends another few spots into the second round, because when you look at the money that guys get at the top of the second round, it's actually pretty good and pretty comparable to the bottom of the first round. Keep in mind, those are usually teams that are completely rebuilding that are going to have some playing time in the NBA. So I'm imagining, you know, top 30, he's got to be outside of that to get him back. That was kind of the line where I was looking, and it looks like he's mostly be above that, which is why I'm assuming he's not going to make it to Michigan.
Could we talk? I mean, I'm interested in all of your impressions on Trey McKinney.
So we need let's do that after the break. We'll talk about young John McKinney III on the other side here. So let's do that. We'll return after the break here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTK, online at thebig1050.com.
Clear on the radio.
So what do you guys think about this window? Somebody said here, Scott Patton said, will Coach Izzo retire soon? I think he's emboldened by the success this year. I think this is like, I told you I still got it. I told you.
He is not allowed to retire until we get like 10 years of paternoing from him. Like, I want that program to completely crater, so people are just absolutely sick of him. And then he turns it over to somebody who is just some lackey lick spittle because, you know, no one wanted to wait around for him anymore. Like, I want Michigan State basketball to be Chicago football.
Yeah, I think the Elite Eight is, you know, as much as it was a fun ride for them, might have been a curse more than it was a blessing, because it just it just hardens him in his tenure, as opposed to getting him closer to retirement. It's like,
I gotta tell you, man, that was just a good basketball team. Like, they had, you know, they killed us, right?
That was a very good basketball team. They couldn't shoot it. But.
Yes, but it does. Well, they learned to shoot. They were shooting better than we were by the end of the Big Ten season.
Yeah.
They do have a point that if you are developing guys, you're going to find more value. I mean, Michigan football could tell anybody this. In a world where everybody is just going out and getting the best player in the portal and trying to, you know, just get the guy who was the guy last year on your roster, and he's sitting around making his players better, that would work. The question is, can he consistently make his players better? Because there have been a lot of examples where he went and got a McDonald's All-American, and that guy just stayed a freshman his whole career.
Xavier Booker.
Yeah, see, and I think
UCLA.
Xavier Booker is why. Yeah, it is an example of why he is going to have a ceiling. Like, his model for success is get a bunch of try-hard bigs. You know, that can win you the Big Ten. Make no mistake. Get you a bunch of try-hard bigs, bang around, be physical, rebound.
Some 5-star guards.
Play real good defense, right? And yeah, that'll get you to a Big Ten title. Maybe it'll get you to the Elite Eight, but he does not have enough horses to, when you are playing. And he won't recruit the portal enough. He won't recruit the portal enough in this day and age to compete with these teams.
It's just such a hassle.
I mean, yeah. I mean,
if you listen to him,
you look at hassle. You look at a Final Four with Janai Broome and Michael Clayton and dudes like that, and Tom Izzo's not going to recruit those guys. Like, okay, pal.
I do want to point out that, you know, Auburn and Florida, they got guys from the portal and then they kept them another year. And I think that's when you really, we're forgetting how much better basketball players, like we talk about the big leap from freshman to sophomore for guards and for bigs a little later, but there are major improvements, from year to year in basketball players, period. Right? Not all of them, not to the same degree, right? Not like you're going from like a 10% usage guy to all of a sudden this dude's your main guy. But like you look at Namari Burnett coming back next year, he at the end of this season, he was starting to create his own offense. F it, I'm going to go get a bucket kind of guy, where he was never that in his entire career before. Maybe like the beginning of his career, he at Texas Tech, he was doing a little bit of that. But like that was not part of his game until all of a sudden he said, I got to be a leader. I've got to just go and score some buckets. And people squeeze out
30 seconds, guys.
more of their ability as they go along. And I think that's, that's why you see that's why you can't predict who's going to win at the beginning of the year. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that you want to get a transfer and keep them a couple of years.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, that might be Mara.
10 seconds, guys. I'm
they
going to count you back in.
him.
All right.
And Johnson,
yeah.
And we're back in 5, 4, 3.
And we are back, folks, here on the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at thebig1050.com. For those of you in the market for a new vehicle, you should get on board with Brighton Ford. Brighton Ford is the ultimate destination for your new Ford, folks. Head right in there and settle into the seat of your favorite vehicle. Get in, take control, and drive off the lot in a car or truck that was meant for you. Go to Brighton Ford, call 1-800-NEW-FORD, or go online at BrightonFord.com and take advantage of the huge savings from now through April 30th. Well-qualified lessees can lease a 2024 Ford Bronco Sport for as low as $321 a month with only $3,500 down plus first payment, taxes, doc fee, title license, and state fees due at signing. Security deposit waive, 7,500 miles per year, 36-month lease. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD or see dealer for full details. Call 1-800-NEW-FORD today. Employee pricing means you pay what they pay. Brighton Ford, the official Ford sponsor of the Big 1050 WTKA. So, Craig,
Yes.
Before we went to the break, you were talking about Trey McKinney.
Yeah.
And this was a question to Dusty yesterday about, like, how do you see him? Because Trey, to me, his game is so much about versatility. Like, he can at Orchard Lake, in AAU, throughout his high school career, it's been like he could do everything. Like, he could play all 5 spots on the floor. Now, that's not going to be his life as a college player.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so intriguing about, to me, about how they envision him in Dusty's scheme and Dusty's offense. What do you see his usage as being? I'm curious, as you watch him as a player and you see Dusty's scheme, what do you think?
Well, he's hard. He's very strong. As a high school kid already, he overpowers people. Now, is he going to overpower people at the college level? I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, is he Mark Jackson, a guy you can post down? He has those super long arms. Could he? And I have a hunch he might be able to post up a lot of smaller guards. He's a very fine shooter, I think, and so there's that. But he's not a super athlete from my watch of him. He, and the big issue with him may be defense. The question is, who does he guard? I don't see him guarding point guards ever. Can he guard 2s? Yeah, probably a lot of 2s, maybe a lot of 3s. But he doesn't have super quick feet when I look at him, at least. But the rest of his game seems, really nice. He has a nice left hand. I mean, which is the first thing I always look at with players is, can he use his left hand, which is true for Mara. Incidentally, also has a very nice left hand. So how he fits in is hard to see. Partly because he is super flexible. He has a lot of skills. But defensively is where where does he fit as a defender? I mean, what do you see? I mean,
yeah. So what I appreciate about Trey is he is a super high IQ player. I think that to be a bigger guard who is not super quick, as you say, he can get to his spot. He gets leverage with his jump shot. I think for quicker guys, you got to respect his ability to shoot, and that creates leverage off the bounce. He is super strong with his dribble. He handles it well, and he creates. I think he creates a lot of separation with his strength and his ability to handle the ball. He can dribble into post looks. He's comfortable with his back to the basket. I think he can score in the mid range in the college game in that way. I don't know if he'll have the freedom to do that as a freshman, but I think that's something that as he matures in his role, that's something that I think the Dusty and crew will allow him to do. I think that he'll have some facilitating duties the deeper that he gets into his career. I don't know that that's something they'll allow him to do as a freshman. And that's why I was asking Dusty, what do you envision his role being? Because I also think that he's a plus shooter. And if you wanted him to be a guy who, hey, he brings the ball up the floor, and his role primarily as a freshman is going to be one of, hey, he's going to be a guy that he can be a reliable shooter, that he's going to feed the post, he's going to knock down open shots, that if that's what you want him to do, then he'll be able to do that. I don't know that he'll be a guy who guards quickness well, but I don't think that quickness was the issue. That as much as guarding the Luke Pattersons of the world, that to me was a more of an issue, and I think that he'll be able to do that. Guarding physicality to me was an issue. I think he'll be able to help with that. As he gets used to the college game. I don't know again if that manifests as a freshman, guys, but I think he'll help in that way.
They saw a couple of quick guys who got them early in the season, but I don't know how many you're going to see in the Big Ten next year. To be honest, I'm looking over the rosters, and it's not like everyone's got these super quick guards. There's a few in the SEC, but you might play one or two SEC teams next year. I think that the way the size that he has and the strength that he has on offense. When you're talking about an offense where you have a Xavier Simpson-esque creator as your point man, he can play off of that, because if you want to switch on that, right, what are you going to do? You're going to end up creating terrible matchups for yourself. As soon as he gets a tiny guard, that dude's gone. And he can create a lot of his shots. So if you have somebody slow or someone playing drop, he can kind of step back and create at the 3-point line. And that's what you need. You need somebody to be you need finishers. And what he's got is a lot of different ways of finishing. It doesn't necessarily have to just go and, he doesn't have to just be free on the line to shoot, right? He doesn't have to just be a driver. And, you're going to have Gale out there. You're going to have Damari out there, hopefully. You're going to have people out there who do have little bits of limitations in the way that they finish. And Trey is a guy that you can say for either those, backing up those two, really, is what you're saying. And when you're having those guys backed up, you're like, okay, however you want to defend this, it's not going to work.
Yeah, what I wonder is how much explosiveness can be added to his game. And let me say here on camera, I'm acknowledging that Trey has added some twitch to his game, to his dad John, who I know watches these, and he said, "Hey man, he's been working the Pilates into his workouts." So I'm giving the young fellas some credit for getting the Pilates in. So I'm paying some recognition to that. But does he get the Tim Hardaway bounce? Because Tim Hardaway added a significant amount of explosion to his game in college, where he had very little lift coming in and had a lot more lift going out.
Well, it's completely different, Sam. I mean, Tim Hardaway's problem wasn't that he wasn't a good athlete or couldn't jump. Tim Hardaway's problem was he couldn't dribble a ball. I mean,
he couldn't dribble the ball, and he couldn't really jump coming in.
Right.
He couldn't jump a lick.
Right. So,
and he and he got some of that coming out. So I don't know if it's like that, or is it more like Jalen Brunson, who it's like, okay, you are forever a below the rim athlete, and I'm not saying the trade will be Jalen Brunson, but you learned the craftiness within those limitations, right? And Jalen is like unbelievable. Now, I'm not saying Trey will ever be that good, but there's some elements of that in his game. You know, can you hone some of that in your playmaking ability and your ability to play, you know, little boy guys in the post and, you know, play make for other guys. I don't know. We'll see.
I want to reference something I was talking about earlier, where you expect some like a freshman to sophomore transition. You expect that guy to get a lot better. It's not like it just happens. It's not like the year turns over and suddenly the freshman bursts from a bubble and now he's this great sophomore. They turn themselves into that. It's their own time and their own focus that does it, and you don't know really until the guy is on campus and in the system, in the program, what that rate is going to be for that individual, because you're talking about insane levels of commitment to the sport and figuring out what you need to do and how to, and they develop those things themselves. They go, they focus on a thing that they want to get better at, and they get themselves better at it. And there's, there are physical limits, but you're mostly talking about something that we just don't know. It's going to be hours and hours and hours of work that we never get to see that these players put in on their own. And you can't tell what that's going to look like when he's coming in as a freshman.
Right. And he can really shoot the basketball. We need to emphasize that.
He's a great shooter.
Yeah, and then you throw in Winters, which you can talk about a lot more lately or next week. Brian, I like Brian Winters is a bucket. Like Winters is a walking bucket, and I think the shooting quotient that these two guys bring to the table, Brian, I think those guys can help Michigan as freshmen in that category. So
yeah, I mean, frequently what you see is freshmen get in the game and they're nervous and they don't get a lot of attempts, and so early it's not very surprising to see a guy like Cadeau, who shot like 20% from three as a freshman, make a leap to year two. So I'm also hoping that LJ Kayson ends up in that bucket too, because it felt like a lot of his misses rimmed out last year, So it felt like the Rodney Gale shooting and LJ Kayson shooting superficially had about similar results, but it really felt like Kayson was a guy who you could expect to take a big leap next year, and Gale, you just don't know.
Yeah. That'll do it for us this week, folks. We'll see you next week on the next edition of the Michigan Insider on the Big 1050 WTKA, online at the Big 1050.